this video, we're going to show you several tricks and techniques that everyone needs to know to use a program effectively. Now let's get started by going up to the Tools menu, and we'll go to Drawing Defaults. Now Drawing Defaults, what we can do here is we can set up values that the program uses to start up. So if you always want to use a certain type of paver material, you could do that. You could also set the default hatch pattern for a paver along with the scale, and you could change the values of the soldier course over here if you wanted to do that. And same way with edging, ground cover, retaining walls, the irrigation pipe. Okay, on the Drawing tab, you'll see here you can set up the paper size. So if you always wanted to set up at a 8.5 by 11 letter size and a drawing scale of say a 1/8 inch scale, you could set those values here. If you want to change the default font style, you can change that here, so that every time that you start a plan or drawing, it's using whatever is set up here in Drawing Defaults. You don't have to keep changing things with each drawing. Okay, so that's Drawing Defaults. Another thing that I would recommend is that you go up and you go to the Tools menu and you go to Drawing Options. Now on the Drawing Options, you have several tabs here. On the File tab, there's a feature here called Autosave, where it will autosave a backup file every few minutes as you're doing a design. So the program, it will initially, after about 10 minutes, ask you to save the drawing, but it's not going to keep asking you every 10 minutes. So this auto save feature, what it's going to do is automatically save your drawing, and it will remember this from drawing to drawing, so you don't have to keep resetting this. So what we would do is suggest that you do every 20 to 30 minutes. You don't want to do it too frequently because it could interrupt you while you're drawing when it's trying to save. So about every 20 to 30 minutes should be fine. Next, what we can do is we're going to show you how to bulge these a line like this one into a nice smooth arc. Now we've talked about this throughout the videos where you can bulge things like this, but if you double click on either a polyline or a polygon shape, that will get into the Edit Vertice mode, where you see the green points along the corners here. Now you can also get into the Edit Vertice mode by right-clicking on it and going to Edit Vertices. Okay. Now if we were to click on this line that moves in between the two green points here, it will just add another point, and there will be straight lines in between that point. But what we can also do is, if we want to add an arc like this, we simply hold the Control key down on the keyboard and then click on the line and then pull it out a little bit and then drop it, and then it adds a nice smooth arc in between those two vertice points. Another thing that we can do here is we can rotate objects around. It's very easy to rotate objects. Anytime that you select an object, you're going to have a yellow triangle in the middle, a yellow diamond in the middle, and a blue triangle, which is our rotation triangle. That rotation triangle, when I mouse over it, you'll see my cursor changes to a little rotation cursor, and I can simply rotate that around like so. Okay, but you'll notice that it does jump from point to point. It doesn't do a fine rotation, but we can do a fine rotation by simply pressing and holding the Shift key down on the keyboard, and that'll give us a nice smooth rotation. So we can rotate it to just about any angle that we want just by doing that. Also, if we pull our cursor out farther away from the object, we have a little better range of motion to rotate those objects around. We can also rotate the hatch patterns within an object. So I have a herringbone brick pattern applied to this one, so what we can do is we can simply right click on that hatch pattern and we can go down to Rotate Pattern, and we get a little rotation triangle on this one. So I just click on it and then I just rotate it around, and then it turns it like so. Alright, one of my favorite tools is the Property Painter tool. This is a big time saver. Now here we have a paver area, and I have a herringbone pattern on it. It's currently in black right now. Let's go ahead and I'm going to select a different color. Let's go with a dark brown. Okay, let's go a little bit brighter. Okay, so we've got that in a brown color, and we've got that herringbone pattern. What we're going to do is the property painter, it's going to copy the properties of this area onto something else. So I have a similar paver over here. I have a couple paver areas here that have different hash patterns applied to them, and they're black, not brown. So the property painter tool is found up here on the toolbar right next to the undo button. I'll click on that. Okay, when I mouse over my drawing, you'll see the cursor changes to a little paintbrush with arrows pointing to it with a little circle there. First I want to click on the perimeter of that paver area, and you'll see now my cursor has changed where the paintbrush is pushing properties to the circle there. So it has two arrows pointing to the circle. I simply go over to the secondary paver and I click on that, and then I go to the third one and click on that. So what it did is it inherited the visual properties of this over to here. Now if I was to change the material type, it's not going to copy the material type over from one to the other. Okay, so it is, you'll see here it says paver 21 on this one, that's tutorial paver on that one, and on this one. So it didn't copy that, but it did copy all of the visual attributes of the first paver onto the second and third one. You can do the same with lines, such as these polylines here. I'll just select my property painter, click on the first one, and then go to the second and the third and the fourth, and that inherits the properties throughout each of those lines. Alright, another tool that we have that can be helpful is one called an ortho lock. An ortho lock just basically locks the cursor or a line to the grid. So if I go in and I'll just select my closed paver tool, and I'll click on a point, and you'll see here it allows me to go at any angle. But let's say I want that to be straight with the grid. I simply press the O key on the keyboard, and that aligns it straight with the grid. So I'll click, and then I'll pull down, and everything here will only go either horizontal or vertical. It does not allow me to draw a diagonal line. Okay, so that's the ortho lock. Okay, we also have X lock and Y lock, where it locks to the X axis and locks to the Y axis. The keyboard shortcuts for those are X and Y. Okay, another important one is one called the normal lock. Now a normal lock is easily demonstrated with the foundation wall tool. I'll select the foundation wall tool, and I'm going to unlock up here on the edit bar so that I can do a diagonal line. Now what I'll do is I'll typically draw the longest wall that I have on a structure at the distance that I need here, at the angle that I want. So I'll go ahead and click there. Okay, so that's my first wall. Okay, now if I press and hold the L key on the keyboard, okay, every line that I draw thereafter, and I'm still holding the L key, which is the normal lock, every line will be based on 90 degrees as far as that first angle. So this is a 90-degree angle, this is a 90 degree, there's 90, 90, 90. So now everything is perfectly aligned. Okay, so I don't have a lot of jagged lines, just because I didn't have to guess where all of my points were. So that's called the normal lock. Okay, next what we're going to do is we're going to show you something called the offset tool. Now an offset tool, I like to use it when I'm drawing, say, a parking lot, and I'm drawing in the stripes in a parking lot. Typically a parking lot stripe is about 20 feet long, and there are usually 9 feet apart, sometimes a little more than 9 feet, but most of the time they're going to be at 9 feet increments. Okay, so this is going to represent one parking lot stripe. Okay, so I'm going to use my offset tool, which is found under the draw menu, and I'll go down to duplicate and offset. Okay, now up in the edit bar I have an offset distance that I'm going to set here at 9 feet. Okay, now when I mouse over this line and I go to one side or the other of that line, and it'll place a parallel line exactly offset 9 feet away. So I can go through and I can very quickly stripe that parking lot using the offset tool. Okay, now similar to the offset tool is the parallel tool. Now the parallel tool is found under that duplicate menu. So if I go to draw, duplicate, and parallel, the parallel tool, you don't have to set a value up in the edit bar because it's going to be a variable distance. So I'll go down to this curve here, I'll click on it to select it, and then I'll pull it in to set the parallel distance. So I want to drop it right about there, so I'll click again, and then it drops that line. So if I want to keep repeating that, I can do that pretty easily. So it matches that curve very nicely, and it should be a nice even spacing all the way throughout that shape. Okay, the final thing that we're going to do here is sometimes what will happen is you will accidentally close a toolbar and you won't know how to get it back. So this is how we get it back. Now an example is I've got my content librarian here and I accidentally drag it off into the edge here. Well, a lot of people, what they'll do is they'll accidentally go ahead and close that. Well, now they've lost their symbol library. So let's show you how to get any toolbar back. To get a toolbar back, we simply go to the View menu and go to Toolbars. Okay, and we look for the ones that are unchecked here. Now the one that I closed accidentally was the Content Librarian. It's a very important one to have that one up there for sure. So we want to check that and click OK, and that brings it back to wherever I closed it, whatever the position was when I had closed that. So if we want to drag this over to the side of the program, you'll notice that when we get to the edge of it, it starts to elongate, and I drop it there and it docks it to the edge of the toolbar. Okay, so anytime that you lose a toolbar, always go up to View and Toolbars, and that'll show you the ones that you've temporarily closed. Okay, hopefully this has been helpful. Check out our blog at prolandscape.com for more tips.